All right, welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise. And use a quick apologies for the quick break. So, as you were saying,
yes. So I was saying, with every pursuit of value, there would always be some challenge to that pursuit. So we look at the objectives of the African Free Trade Area, which is to catalyze trade within Africa, which is the main emphasis of the agreement. Perhaps the increase and the influx of persons, commodities, perhaps the having to collaborate a bit more with a wider area. Right now, we have the West African Free Trade Area, which is done by the Commission. I think it's the ECOWAS Commission currently set up. Now, you're going to have to be dealing with other regional players. Then you have to deal with greater influx of persons. If you look at the incidents we've been having in the Northwest, transnational crime has been a big issue. The proliferation of small and light weapons in the Northwest, and some of those weapons availability is also fueling conflict in the Northeast. We've seen an uptick in violence in the Southwest with the recent spike in kidnappings, which hitherto has plagued the Southeast. So perhaps maybe the IG is also looking at that, a broader spectrum to have to deal with beyond Nigeria, ECOWAS. Now you're looking at Africa as a larger body. So yes, I agree with him. There has to be better collaboration. There has to be more intelligence sharing platforms, and there also has to be. We need to see more sincerity on the parts of other African states, because the cardinal principle upon which the African Continental Free Trade Area would thrive is trust. Because you're creating a single market. You are putting a lot on the other side with the hope that the person will do his part to protect your interests as that agreement comes to force. So I understand his sentiment, okay? And if you look at where we are currently, we're not spending as much as we should be spending on security. We don't really have the budget. I think the last budget for police was about 300-something billion, which is a far cry from where we should be. So by the time you're increasing the scope and responsibility of the current structure, you also need to be able to increase the level of investment in that sector. So I think he's just laying the groundwork for a bit of a complaint.
So let me pick your brain on this. All of this is coming on the heels of Interpol Week. Interpol Week pretty much started a couple of days back. There was a parade. And these are the conversations around Interpol Week. And all of this also is coming on the heels of the logistical nightmare going on at the borders due to search now, as we speak. I mean, I think it's about day 10 now.
Yes.
And we are still going till about the middle of, or the 1st of September, thereabout. And we have seen how this has truncated movement of goods and services. The price of rice, for instance, surged from about 11,000 to 14,000 naira, based on what is happening on the border. Some people will say, oh, there are some quick gains. The artillery is said to be owned by the American military, you know, heavy military equipment taken by the customs, now straight on by the military taken to the customs and straight on and things like that. If we're having logistical nightmares like this, if we're just doing
ECOWAS. Yeah.
ECOWAS.
Yes.
How about when we start to do at large, with Africa at large? Can you just, give us a panoramic view of, because it's an impending challenge that will come.
So you begin to get a deeper sense of the issues and some of the concerns that some of the people in government security agencies will be having right now. Let's look at the case of Benin Republic, our very interesting neighbors. If I
Nigeria's 37th state.
Yeah, so pretty much. Now, it's instructive to note that we signed on to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. When we signed on, Benin signed on. Immediately after we did, they were the 55th country to have signed on. 70% of the imports that come through Benin land in Nigeria. The then President Obasanjo once upon a time also shut down the land borders with Benin. They had to come cap in hand begging for us to open up the borders. So the issues we have at the border are very serious issues. I know that perhaps we should have received some advance warning or notices, but I would lean a bit on the side of government, okay? Just to say perhaps there's a need to sanitize that area, reach some formal agreement, because in the interplay of nations, which is the panoramic view you want to see, nations will play against each other, seeking to foster their own national interests. The president did congratulate. Let's look at the case of Ghana. He congratulated Ghana for winning, for winning the bid, as it were, to now be the headquarters of the Free Trade Area Council, whatever it will be. The setting up of the council in itself brings with it some investment in infrastructure that the council would need to thrive. The real estate value, wherever that council will be, would bloom and blossom. Now, if you look at Abuja, Abuja has a diplomatic boulevard. Where you have currently situated in Abuja there, what's called the World Trade Center, built by Churchgate. Imagine if the Free Trade Area headquarters was in Abuja. The value and the value chain, the many linked auxiliary services that will be. So every nation is playing against each other in this committee of nations. So when you bring Nigeria to a bigger port, which is why there was some hesitation, the South African regional bloc, SADC, they have already a thriving manufacturing sector. By the time you're coming into the Continental Free Trade Area, what are you coming with? Our industries are not necessarily thriving. They don't look like in a good shape to compete. Yes, we're going to have about 1.2 to 1.3 billion market size, growing, looking at an economy of about $4 trillion. But what exactly is Nigeria bringing to the table? So these are germane issues to have. So when you then look at the fact that we are the largest market, as it were, in Africa, you think about the influx of goods, services, persons into Nigeria, and the connections you begin to have with other regional players. The security forces have a lot of things to be worried about.
Is this the time to start talking to the likes of EGAD in Eastern Africa, SADC,
yes,
the Maghreb Union? So is this the time to start talking to them? Because we need those conversations now.
I think the conversations are going on. And I think the way the agreement has been set up is that first the regions will first talk to themselves, agree on basic principles of protocols, because the regions already have some kind of tariff protocols, concessions already in place. So it's just for the regions to then come to a bit of an agreement, then take and cascade down to the union states that makes up those unions. So I think conversations are already going on. But you see, the concerns that even the president has are very germane. For me, as an economist first by training, Nigeria brings nothing to the table to this agreement. Rather, we're a market to be supplied to. So with that increase in influx of goods, services, persons, for example, let me just digress a bit. Look at the crisis region in the Northeast. Nigeria is bearing the larger part of the brunt. At that region where Niger intersects Chad and Nigeria, that northeastern region, you don't have so much interest in Chad because the money is in Nigeria. The interest is not as much as it should be in Niger because the interest is in Nigeria. The dollars are in Nigeria. So we continue to bear the brunt of the raging terrorism in the Northeast because the interest lies more on this side. So when you broaden the port, you bring us into a single market. Transnational crime is a business. And what I would always find is level. So once we become a part of one single market, then we become candidates for certain attention and interest.
Transnational terrorism, Akim, Al-Qaeda and Islamic Maghreb, holding sway. You've got the Tuareg rebels in Mali.
Yes.
When you move up north, Morocco, the Sahrawi people are still looking for their independence.
Yeah.
National crime in South Africa is rife. You move down to the south, you have this problem. You move down to the Niger Delta, you still hear about militancy and things like that. You move down, you hear Boko Haram insurgency, headsman, things like that. Africa has become a cesspit of violence across board. And all of these too will seep in since the borders are open and trade is open. Even the so-called Rwanda we're all celebrating, there's still people that are still very strong with the Intamaris. They have weapons and things like that.
Yeah.
How will Nigeria cope with its borders? Borders that it is said that we don't have scanners working?
Well, I think you paint a very perfect picture of the situation, perhaps more gory than the security person will put it. But that's the fact of the matter, and it's not a laughing issue. So I apologize for even giggling a bit. But the issues are germane, and the issues are there. Okay, so how do we cope? With every pursuit of value, okay, there has to be that requisite and matching level of investment into security. when you talk about national prosperity, you can't talk about national prosperity without national security. So those two must go hand in hand.
We'll come and talk about national prosperity, national security, and every other sundry issue after this break. In case you're just joining us, we're talking to Onyekachi Adekoya, security expert at risk management. We're talking about AFCT and the security implications. We'll be right back after this quick commercial timeout. All right, welcome back. Still one issue here on the Rise News. We're talking to Onyekachi Adekoya, security expert and risk management analyst, and we're talking about challenges that would emanate as regards to security challenges that would emanate from the signing of the AFCT and the like. So I painted a view about the challenges we'll have, and you were trying to answer that question?
Yeah, so the challenges over there. So I think what we now need to begin to, I think the IGP, first of all, is setting a bit of a background to the conversations that needs to be had with the powers that be. So we also need to look at our preparedness as a nation state and what we are going to be going into that agreement with, and the level of collaborations we need to have in place before the implementations of whatever protocols. And perhaps now is also a good time to have these conversations, because the protocols to be agreed to they're still in the draft stage. So conversations must go back and forth. We must have firm commitments on intelligence sharing on our part for our security concerns and for our comfort, and secure the relationships that we need to have. But we also need to be very careful. The world is a bit of, it's becoming more of a global village. So issues in Sudan, issues in the Maghreb, issues in SA and the free movement of people, those issues can quickly become Nigeria's own problem. So we also need to have strong assurances that we'll have collaborations with other nation states to also better protect ourselves going forward.
So let's talk about comparative advantage, because for this Africa trade deal, it matters if you have comparative advantage to your neighbors.
Correct.
So does Nigeria have any comparative advantage going into this deal? Because there's a concept of winners and losers, like even in the EU where they have their free trade deal. There are winners and losers economically, security-wise, and what have you. So is Nigeria, what is our comparative advantage?
I think the comparative advantage would be rather speculative, first of all, for me. But in terms of sheer human capital, our sheer numbers, we have some strength in our numbers. Educational systems is not really as it should be. We have huge mineral resources. The extractive industry is still where we play majorly. Manufacturing is neither here nor there. So maybe the likes of Dangote, maybe quick winners, maybe the likes of Honeywell, perhaps maybe Nigerian companies also need some time to begin to shape themselves for the wider market. But as it is right now today, the level of preparedness on the part of the private sector is not really there, which is why they were also a bit hesitant and they raised some concerns with the federal government. There would be some advantages. You're looking at 1.3 billion market, so capitalists will begin to think outside the box to say we have a larger market, there's less restriction, perhaps we need to begin to position ourselves to better gain more value. So currently, industry-wise, we don't bring so much to the table. We have Innosin manufacturing here, or maybe semi-knockdown manufacturing, but it's really hard to see. It's really hard to see.
So definitely this trade was going to impact small and medium enterprises.
Correct, that's the intention.
Exactly, whether positively or negatively. What are some of the impacts that it may have on small and medium enterprises negatively in Nigeria?
Negatively, well, so I think within the elements in the agreement, there's some anti-dumping provisions, okay? So let me give a case in point. The largest manufacturers of chocolate in Africa, I think the two countries are Egypt and South Africa. And I think the bulk of their imports would come from Ghana and I think maybe Ivory Coast or something. But the chocolate paste needed to make chocolate have to come from the Netherlands, have to come from Switzerland, from Sweden, sorry. So you take from Nigeria also exports cocoa, you export to Sweden, to the Netherlands, they make the chocolate paste, they then export back to Egypt. And so you see the value chain is not there. So one of the contentions in the trade agreement is the rules of origin. How do you determine? Again, this whole agreement will be based on trust. So when you come to the contention of rule of origins and what are the goods and services that qualify for that 90% off discount, rules of origin will also matter. What is the level of your components in that product which has been made, what's the level which has been made in Africa? So you're talking about the impact to small-scale businesses. If we say the market is 4 trillion, the essence of the agreement is to spur growth, and growth will be driven by SMEs. And most times SMEs provide auxiliary services to some of these manufacturing concerns. So if that linkage is not there, and nation states are not being sincere with the rule of origins component, then the net impact may also be negative. Which is why some people are saying, hey, we need to be sure of what Kenya is doing. We need to be sure what South Africa is doing, so that whatever it is we're getting into, the SMEs, the other auxiliary industries will benefit from the value chain that will be created.
But that is already happening, and you see, that takes me to another term called over-domination by some countries. I mean, prior to all of this happening, I think Morocco had even tried to join the West Africa and the ECOWAS.
They were the last.
and you see, Morocco is very tactical. And why they were trying to join ECOWAS was this. If you go to Ivory Coast, Abidjan, I've been in and around of Abidjan, did some business there, you'll see that most of the banks are Moroccan-owned banks. So Morocco as a country has dominated the banking sector in a country like Abidjan, for instance. I mean, no indigenous-owned banks in Abidjan. What will you say as regards that? Because that's not fair when it comes to this matter.
So somebody joked and said that in the era of this agreement, Nigeria should be the one racing to the forefront to say, hey, let's join it. But I think Nigerians are very smart people. They know currently we don't hold some of the ACs in this continent, as it were. So yeah, we'll have some of those concerns. But you see, if you are going to trade in the marketplace, you shouldn't be afraid of competition if you're smart. Okay, so the first thing is the market size. We have some provisions for protection of infant industries, of sensitive industries.
You shouldn't be afraid of competition in a perfect market.
No market is perfect. Even America is not a perfect market.
In a perfect market, because they're monopolistic competitions.
So even America is not...
I'm saying that because you're an economist by training.
I am an economist.
So when you say you shouldn't be afraid of competition, I'm like, okay, there's a monopolistic competition.
So in economics, we'll say, first of all, ceteris paribus. All things being equal. Okay, but you know things will never be equal, which is why some people would push for a mixed economy, an approach. Some people clamor for socialism. It has its own benefits. It has its own downside. Excessive capitalism also has its own downside. So there will be some level of protectionist policy put in place to safeguard. And that's where when the nation states come to the table, they must agree. But in all, I don't think we should be too worried as Nigerians on this monopolistic approach to our own, because the Nigerian market is set up fairly. All we need the right environment, the right infrastructure, the right support, and the businesses will thrive. And we're very aggressive when it comes to the business place.
Would you favor, in the bit of talking about security for AFCTA, would you favor also the AFCTA Secretariat having conversations about like an Africa Pool Armed Forces force, sort of like a NATO?
Yes.
You know, that will be able to fight threats across the African region, you know, like a pool volunteer for like what AMISOM is doing in Somalia.
Yes.
So would you favor something like that?
It's not whether I favor it or not. It's not really the issue here. We will have that.
Okay.
We will have central commissions to deal with issues of environment, issues of security, issues of trade. You know, so we're going to have layered on the current governments, because the government structures in the nation states will not be collapsed. There would seek to be some integration between maybe like ministries of finance. There would then be a central commission for finance, you know, a central bank for the African Union, for the African Free Trade. So there would be some mergers of functions and some centralization of functions. So that we will have that, okay? But again, coming into such an agreement with 55 countries to deal with, the issues of trust, national interest will come to the fore. So some of those fears, And it's okay to have the fears. You must, in security, we like to say that you plan for the worst, you hope for the best.
Polarization of currency is another conversation. All of this will lead to the echo, the currency.
Yes.
But we all know what happened to economies like Britain. 1992, 93, precisely, Black Wednesday, Norman Lamar was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And we all saw that what was called the European mechanism rate of management of currency did falter so much that Britain had a recession. I mean, real quickly, currency normalization and things like that. Quickly, in less than 20 seconds.
So, I mean, we'll just be going into speculations here. We'll wait and see how it goes. But I have these concerns also. The concerns are real and germane. But let's see how it goes. I hope we don't have a Nexit. I don't know what we'll call our own exit. But it looks like it's going to be the enemy.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Adekoya. Well, that brings us to the end of the show today. I'm Nkechi Nana.
And I'm Rufai Oseni. And thank you so much for watching from our entire team here in Lagos. Enjoy the rest of your morning and the rest of your day. Goodbye.